Hello there, and welcome to the Sleepy Facts channel. I'm so glad you found your way here. Maybe you had a long day, or maybe you're the kind of person who likes falling asleep to the quiet rhythms of the savannah, rather than counting sheep. Either way, tonight's journey is for you. Let your mind relax, your breathing slow, and your body grow light as the warm winds that sweep across golden grasslands. Because tonight, we're exploring the gentle beasts of the savannah, creatures who move through their world with patience, grace, and an ancient wisdom written into their very bones. We'll drift from the slow footsteps of elephants to the quiet grazing of zebras, discovering how life unfolds when there is no rush, only the steady pulse of survival and connection. Some of what you hear tonight may surprise you, or at least spark curiosity as you drift off. Before we begin, if this helps you unwind, consider liking and subscribing, one sleepy soul at a time. Now, let's begin. The African elephant walks through the savannah with footsteps so deliberate that each one seems to mark the passage of time itself. These magnificent beings can weigh up to 6 tons, yet they move with a gentleness that belies their size, placing each foot with care to avoid crushing the small creatures beneath them. Their feet have special padding that acts like cushions, absorbing the impact and allowing them to walk almost silently, despite their mass. When a herd moves together, they create paths through the grass that other animals follow, like ancient roads drawn by the slowest and most thoughtful travelers. This patience in movement extends to every aspect of their lives, from the way they reach for acacia leaves to the careful touch of a trunk against a newborn calf. The elephant's trunk contains over 40,000 muscles, making it one of the most versatile tools in the animal kingdom. With this single appendage, an elephant can lift logs weighing hundreds of pounds, or pick up a single blade of grass with the precision of fingers. They use their trunks to drink, drawing up to 2 gallons of water at a time, and then curling the trunk to pour the water into their mouths. The tip of the trunk has finger-like projections that allow for incredible dexterity, and elephants have been observed using them to comfort each other, wrapping trunks together in what can only be described as embraces. This remarkable organ takes years for young elephants to master, and calves can be seen practicing their trunk control, sometimes tripping over it as they learn. Beyond its physical uses, the trunk serves as a way to communicate, touching and caressing other members of the herd in gestures of affection that speak to bonds deeper than words. Elephants possess memories that stretch across decades, allowing them to remember the locations of water sources even after years of drought. When the rains fail and the savannah becomes parched, the oldest matriarch leads her family to waterholes she visited in her youth, sometimes traveling hundreds of miles to find relief. This knowledge is not written down or passed through any means we would recognize as language, yet it persists generation after generation, held in the minds of those who have lived longest. They remember individuals too, recognizing the calls of elephants they have not seen in years, and responding with what appears to be joy. Studies have shown that elephants can even recognize the bones of their dead relatives, stopping to touch skulls and tusks with their trunks in moments of quiet contemplation that suggest grief or remembrance. Their capacity for memory makes them living libraries of the savannah, carrying within them the wisdom of survival, earned through experience and observation. The social structure of elephant herds revolves around the matriarch, typically the oldest and largest female, who guides her family with decisions born from decades of experience. She determines when to move, where to find food, and how to respond to danger, while the other elephants follow her lead with trust built over years of shared life. Young elephants learn by watching her, absorbing lessons about which plants are safe to eat and which paths lead to water. When she dies, the herd may gather around her body for days, touching her gently with their trunks, as if saying goodbye to a teacher and friend. The death of a matriarch can leave a herd vulnerable, as younger elephants may lack the knowledge needed to navigate the harshest seasons. This dependency on elder wisdom creates a society where age is honored, and the oldest members are protected and respected. The bonds between mothers, daughters, sisters, and aunts form a web of relationships so complex and enduring that elephants have been observed helping relatives they have not seen in years. Elephants communicate through low-frequency rumbles that travel through the ground faster than through the air, allowing herds to stay connected across distances of several miles. These infrasonic calls, too low for human ears to detect without special equipment, carry messages about danger, food, or simply the location of family members who have wandered out of sight. Other elephants receive these vibrations through the sensitive skin on their feet and trunks, feeling the words of their relatives through the earth itself. This underground telegraph system means that elephants are never truly alone, even when separated by vast stretches of grassland. During droughts, a matriarch's call announcing the discovery of water can bring scattered family groups together at a waterhole, reuniting relatives who have been apart for weeks. The depth and complexity of these communications suggest an inner life rich with emotion and intention. A world of conversation happening beneath the threshold of our hearing. When multiple herds gather, the air and ground fill with a symphony of rumbles, each elephant contributing to a discussion we can only begin to understand. The skin of an elephant, despite appearing thick and tough, is actually quite sensitive and requires constant care to stay healthy in the harsh sun of the savannah. Elephants spend hours each day covering themselves with mud and dust, creating a protective layer that shields their skin from sunburn and insect bites. This behavior is not merely practical but appears to bring them pleasure, as elephants can be seen choosing specific mud wallows and returning to favored spots repeatedly. After bathing, they often use their trunks to throw dust over their backs, covering every reachable surface with a fine powder that dries into a natural sunscreen. Young elephants learn this behavior from their mothers, and calves will imitate the adults, flopping into shallow puddles with an enthusiasm that seems almost playful. The mud also helps to regulate their body temperature, cooling them through evaporation as the water in the mud slowly dries. In this way, even the simple act of staying clean becomes a ritual that connects elephants to the earth and water of their home. Elephants display what scientists call allocare, meaning that all members of a herd help raise the young regardless of direct relation. When a calf is born, aunts, sisters, and even unrelated females gather around, touching the newborn with their trunks and helping it to stand on wobbly legs. This communal parenting ensures that calves are almost never alone, with multiple adults watching over them as they explore and learn. If a mother is feeding, another elephant will babysit, keeping the calf safe and entertained with gentle nudges and playful trunk touches. Calves nurse for years, but they also receive care in the form of protection, teaching, and simple companionship from the entire herd. When danger approaches, the adults form a protective circle around the young, presenting a wall of bodies that few predators dare to challenge. This cooperative approach to raising young means that elephant calves grow up surrounded by teachers and protectors, learning from many adults rather than just their mother. The patience shown to young elephants as they learn is remarkable, with adults tolerating clumsiness and mistakes with a gentleness that speaks to deep bonds of family. An elephant's tusks are actually elongated incisor teeth that continue growing throughout the animal's life, sometimes reaching lengths of over 6 feet. These ivory tools serve multiple purposes, from stripping bark off trees to digging for water and minerals in dry riverbeds. Each elephant shows a preference for using either the left or right tusk more frequently, much like humans favor one hand over the other, and the favored tusk often becomes more worn down over time. In the softer earth near waterholes, elephants use their tusks to excavate, creating depressions that fill with water and provide drinking spots for smaller animals who cannot dig themselves. The tusks also play a role in social interactions, with elephants resting their tusks on each other's backs in gestures of friendship and comfort. Despite their strength and utility, tusks can break if used carelessly, and elephants seem to understand this, employing them with a measured force that balances effectiveness with preservation. The shape and size of tusks vary greatly between individuals, giving each elephant a unique profile that others in the herd can recognize from a distance. The relationship between elephants and the baobab tree is one of mutual influence, with each shaping the life of the other across generations. Elephants strip bark from baobab trees during the dry season, accessing the moisture stored within the trunk when other water sources have dried up. While this damages the tree, baobabs have adapted to survive such treatment, regenerating their bark over time and continuing to grow despite repeated visits from thirsty elephants. The elephants, in turn, help disperse baobab seeds by eating the fruit and depositing the seeds far from the parent tree in their dung, which also provides fertilizer for the seeds to germinate. This cycle of use and renewal has existed for so long that baobabs now depend on elephants for reproduction, as the seeds germinate better after passing through an elephant's digestive system. When elephants disappear from an area, baobab populations decline, unable to spread without their largest seed dispersers. The sight of an elephant reaching up with its trunk to pull down a hanging fruit pod is a reminder that even the gentlest actions can have profound effects on the landscape. These interactions, repeated across centuries, have literally shaped the savannah, determining where trees grow and how forests expand or contract. Elephants show a remarkable awareness of their own bodies and physical presence, carefully navigating through dense vegetation without damaging plants unnecessarily. When moving through thorny acacia thickets, they choose paths that accommodate their bulk, sometimes spending extra time finding routes that avoid harming themselves or the plants. This spatial intelligence extends to their use of tools, with elephants observed using branches held in their trunks to swat flies from hard-to-reach places on their bodies. They understand weight and leverage, testing the strength of logs before stepping on them to cross streams and adjusting their posture to distribute weight more evenly on soft ground. Young elephants learn these skills through observation and practice, sometimes making mistakes that the adults gently correct by demonstration rather than force. The coordination required to move such a large body through varied terrain, while maintaining awareness of every family member's location, speaks to a cognitive sophistication that we are only beginning to appreciate. When an elephant carefully steps over a tortoise in its path or pauses to let a mongoose family scurry past, these small acts reveal an awareness that extends beyond mere survival to something approaching consideration. The gestation period for an elephant lasts approximately 22 months, the longest of any land mammal, giving the developing calf time to form the complex brain it will need to navigate the social and physical challenges of savannah life. During this time, the mother continues her normal activities, traveling with the herd and maintaining her position in the social structure even as she carries the growing weight of her offspring. Other females in the herd seem aware of her condition, showing increased protectiveness and allowing her first access to water and choice feeding areas. When birth approaches, the pregnant elephant seeks a quiet spot away from the main herd, though she is usually accompanied by 1 or 2 experienced females who serve as midwives, helping her through the labor and protecting her during this vulnerable time. The newborn emerges, weighing around 250 pounds, able to stand within an hour but still wobbly and uncertain in its movements. The herd celebrates the arrival with rumbles and gentle touches, welcoming the calf into a family that will protect and teach it for years to come. The long gestation creates a deep bond between mother and calf even before birth, as the developing elephant has already been listening to the low-frequency rumbles of the herd through the wall of the womb. Elephants demonstrate tool use in ways that reveal not just intelligence but creativity, modifying objects to suit their needs. They break branches to specific lengths to use as fly swatters, selecting wood that is flexible enough to swing but sturdy enough to be effective. When crossing muddy ground, they have been observed placing large sticks or branches in soft spots to create stable footing, essentially building simple bridges. Some elephants use rocks to throw at electric fences, testing the barrier without touching it themselves, while others pile up earth to gain access to food hung out of trunks' reach. These behaviors are not instinctive, but learned and adapted to specific situations, with different elephant populations developing unique solutions to local challenges. The use of tools requires planning and understanding of cause and effect. Abilities that place elephants among the most cognitively advanced animals on Earth. When a young elephant watches an adult solve a problem with a tool and then imitates that behavior days later, we witness the transmission of culture, knowledge passing from generation to generation through teaching and observation. The feet of an elephant are engineering marvels, designed to support immense weight while allowing silent movement and providing sensory information about the environment. Each foot contains a large pad of fatty tissue that acts like a shock absorber, expanding when the elephant steps down and cushioning the impact. This adaptation allows elephants to walk across various terrains, from hard-packed earth to soft sand, adjusting their gait to maintain stability. The soles of their feet are also incredibly sensitive, capable of detecting vibrations in the ground produced by other elephants miles away. This sensitivity means that elephants receive information through their feet almost constantly, feeling the approach of distant herds, the rumble of thunder far beyond the horizon, and possibly even the tremors that precede earthquakes. The foot care elephants perform, scraping their feet against rocks and trees to remove hardened mud and debris, is not just hygiene, but maintenance of a crucial sensory organ. Walking slowly through the savannah, each elephant processes a stream of data from the earth itself, staying connected to a world that speaks in vibrations and pressure waves. African elephants can live for 60 to 70 years in the wild, with their lifespan limited partly by the condition of their teeth. Elephants have 6 sets of molars that emerge over their lifetime, moving forward from the back of the jaw like a conveyor belt of grinding surfaces. As each set wears down from processing tough grasses and woody vegetation, it is replaced by the next, until the final set emerges around age 40. Once this last set wears down, usually around age 60, the elephant can no longer process food efficiently and may slowly starve, a natural end to a long life. This dental timeline shapes elephant society, as the oldest matriarchs possess not only accumulated wisdom, but also teeth in their final stages, making their deaths somewhat predictable to researchers who study them. The wearing down of teeth is so gradual that elephants adjust their diet over time, seeking softer vegetation as their molars become less effective. In areas where elephants have access to swamps with soft aquatic plants, they may live longer by supplementing their diet with easier-to-chew food. This connection between teeth and lifespan means that the very tools elephants use to survive also determine when their time will end, linking their beginning and ending in a cycle as natural as the seasons. Elephants engage in behaviors that appear playful even in adulthood, maintaining a sense of curiosity and joy throughout their lives. They have been observed sliding down muddy banks on their bellies, trumpeting with what sounds like excitement as they splash into water below. Young elephants chase birds and butterflies, running in circles with their trunks raised and ears flapping, while adults sometimes engage in gentle sparring matches that seem more about entertainment than establishing dominance. Water brings out particularly exuberant behavior, with elephants spraying each other, submerging completely, and rolling in shallows with obvious pleasure. These moments of play serve multiple purposes beyond simple enjoyment, helping young elephants develop coordination and strength while maintaining social bonds between adults. The fact that elephants continue to play throughout their lives suggests an emotional richness that includes not just survival instincts but capacity for joy and wonder. When a 70-year-old matriarch pauses in her journey to investigate an interesting rock or to feel the texture of a new plant with her trunk, she reminds us that wisdom and curiosity can coexist, that even the oldest souls can find novelty in their familiar world. The digestive system of an elephant is remarkably inefficient, extracting only about 40% of the nutrients from the plant matter they consume. This means that elephants must eat enormous quantities of food, up to 300 pounds of vegetation per day, to meet their energy needs. They spend up to 18 hours each day feeding, moving slowly from plant to plant, selecting leaves, bark, roots, and grass with careful deliberation. Despite eating so much, their inefficient digestion benefits the ecosystem, as their dung is full of seeds and partially digested plant material that fertilizes the soil and feeds countless insects and smaller animals. Dung beetles rely almost entirely on elephant droppings, rolling away portions of each pile to feed their larvae, while baboons and birds pick through the dung for undigested seeds and fruits. This inefficiency turns elephants into mobile fertilizer factories, enriching the soil wherever they travel and helping to maintain the diversity of plant life across the savanna. The nutrients they deposit in one area may have been consumed miles away, effectively redistributing resources across the landscape. In this way, the elephant's simple act of eating and digesting becomes a gift to the entire ecosystem, supporting life far beyond their own survival. Elephants demonstrate empathy not only toward their own species, but sometimes toward other animals in distress. There are documented cases of elephants pausing their travels to help exhausted buffalo escape from mud, using their trunks to lift the struggling animals to firmer ground. They have been observed standing guard over injured animals, providing shade and protection, even when no direct benefit to themselves is apparent. When domestic animals become trapped in wells or ditches, elephants have sometimes intervened, though they could easily continue on their way. These behaviors suggest an emotional capacity that extends beyond kinship, recognizing suffering and responding with assistance, even across species boundaries. The motivation behind such actions remains a mystery that scientists continue to study. But the frequency of these observations suggests they are not mere accidents, but genuine responses to perceived need. Whether driven by emotional resonance or simple problem-solving instincts, these interventions reveal a gentleness that contradicts any image of elephants as simple giants, concerned only with their own herd. When an elephant reaches down with its trunk to help a creature so much smaller than itself, the gesture speaks to something beyond instinct, touching on what we might recognize as compassion. The ears of an African elephant can span up to 6 feet across, serving purposes far beyond hearing. These massive structures are filled with blood vessels that help regulate body temperature, as elephants lack sweat glands and must cool themselves through other means. By flapping their ears, elephants increase air circulation over the thin skin, cooling the blood flowing through the vessels before it returns to the body's core. The size and shape of each elephant's ears are unique, like fingerprints, allowing researchers to identify individuals from photographs. Elephants use their ears for communication as well, holding them out to appear larger when threatening, or folding them back when feeling submissive or relaxed. The ears also amplify sound, helping elephants detect distant calls from family members or the approach of potential danger. When temperatures soar during the hottest part of the day, a herd at rest will stand in shade, gently flapping their ears in a synchronized rhythm that looks almost like a slow, collective breathing. The membranes of the ears are so thin that sunlight shining from behind an elephant can illuminate the network of blood vessels like a living stained glass window, beautiful and functional in equal measure. African elephants require access to water daily, drinking up to 50 gallons when it is available, yet they can go several days without if necessary. During droughts, the matriarch leads her herd to ancient water sources, known only through generational memory, sometimes digging in dry riverbeds where water flows beneath the surface. Using their tusks, trunks, and feet, elephants excavate wells that can be several feet deep, accessing groundwater that smaller animals cannot reach. Once the elephants have drunk their fill and moved on, these wells become communal resources, used by zebras, wildebeest, and countless other species who lack the ability to dig themselves. The elephant's excavations can sustain entire communities of animals through the driest seasons, making them inadvertent well diggers whose labor benefits the whole savanna. The knowledge of where to dig and how deep is passed from matriarch to calf, with young elephants watching and learning the subtle signs that indicate water below ground. This tradition of well digging has been observed in the same locations across generations, with some elephant wells being so old that trees have grown around them, creating permanent oases in otherwise arid landscapes. The temporal glands, located on either side of an elephant's head, secrete a substance called temporin. When the elephant experiences strong emotions or enters musth, a period of increased hormones and aggression seen primarily in males, these secretions can stain the elephant's face, running down in dark streaks that other elephants recognize as signs of emotional or physiological state. While musth makes bull elephants more dangerous and unpredictable, the temporal glands also activate during moments of joy, stress, or excitement, unrelated to aggression. Baby elephants sometimes show temporal secretion when separated from their mothers, the discharge signaling their distress to the herd. The substance has a strong odor that other elephants detect from considerable distances, adding a chemical dimension to their already complex communication system. Understanding these secretions helps researchers assess elephant emotional states without disturbing them, reading the language written across their faces. The temporal glands serve as windows into the inner experiences of elephants, making their feelings visible in ways that remind us how much we share with these giants, including the basic experience of emotions that rise and fall like tides within us. Elephants have been observed covering dead family members with leaves, branches, and earth, returning to the bodies over several days to stand in apparent vigil. This behavior, rare in the animal kingdom, suggests a concept of death and mourning that goes beyond simple recognition of a corpse. They pay particular attention to the bones and tusks of deceased elephants, even those who died years before, touching the remains gently with their trunks, and sometimes carrying tusks for short distances before setting them down. When an elephant dies, the herd may refuse to leave the body for hours or even days, standing in silence or making low rumbles that could be attempts at communication or simply expressions of grief. Young elephants who witness these mourning behaviors learn about death from their elders, understanding before they fully comprehend their own mortality that loss is part of life. The rituals elephants perform around death vary between families and regions, suggesting cultural traditions passed down through generation. Some researchers believe that elephants remember the locations where loved ones died, avoiding those areas or approaching them with apparent caution years later. These behaviors around death remain among the most mysterious aspects of elephant life, hinting at an inner world we can observe but never fully enter. The relationship between elephants and the African savannah is so intertwined that the landscape would transform dramatically without them, becoming denser and less diverse. Elephants create clearings by pushing over trees, opening the forest canopy, and allowing grasses to grow in sunny patches that attract grazers. They create paths through dense vegetation that become roads for other animals, their regular passage keeping routes open through otherwise impenetrable thickets. By dispersing seeds across vast distances, they plant forests, their dung serving as both seed vessel and fertilizer in locations far from the parent plants. The wells they dig create water sources. Their feeding opens feeding grounds, and their very presence shapes which plants thrive and which cannot withstand the pressure of such large herbivores. Scientists call elephants a keystone species, meaning that their presence supports a disproportionate number of other species compared to their population size. Remove elephants from an ecosystem, and the effects ripple outward, changing vegetation structure, water availability, and the distribution of resources that countless other animals depend upon. Their role as ecosystem engineers is performed unconsciously, simply by living their lives, eating, drinking, moving, and existing in a place. The savannah as we know it is, in many ways, a collaboration between elephants and the land, each shaping the other across millennia. The musculature of an elephant's trunk allows for incredibly precise control, from the power needed to tear apart a tree to the gentleness required to caress a newborn calf. The trunk has no bones, only muscles, tendons, and connective tissue, arranged in layers that provide flexibility in every direction. Elephants can extend their trunks over 12 feet, reaching high into trees or down into deep holes with equal ease. The nostrils run the length of the trunk, allowing elephants to breathe while holding water in the trunk's internal reservoir. and the muscular control is precise enough that they can selectively spray stored water or draw in air without mixing the two. Young calves spend months learning to coordinate their trunks, often sucking on them for comfort, much like human babies suck their thumbs. Adult elephants use their trunks in greeting ceremonies, wrapping them around each other or inserting the tip into another elephant's mouth in gestures of trust and affection. The trunk serves as hand, nose, voice amplifier, drinking straw, and sensing device all at once, making it perhaps the most versatile appendage evolution has ever produced. Its flexibility allows elephants to inhabit a wider range of ecological niches than they otherwise could, reaching food sources at multiple heights and adapting to various feeding strategies as seasons and available vegetation change. Elephants face numerous threats from predators only when young and vulnerable, with lion prides occasionally targeting calves who wander too far from protective adults. The herd's response to such danger is immediate and coordinated, with adults forming a defensive circle around the young, presenting a wall of tusks and trunks that few predators dare breach. Female elephants are especially vigilant about protection, trumpeting alarm calls that can be heard for miles and rushing toward any perceived threat with surprising speed. Even crocodiles, which might attempt to grab elephants while they drink, face significant risk, as an adult elephant can use its tusks and weight to kill a crocodile in retaliation. The understanding of danger seems innate in elephants from birth, with calves staying close to their mothers instinctively and fleeing toward the center of the herd at the first sign of alarm. This collective defense strategy means that predation on elephants is rare, with most elephant deaths coming from drought, starvation in old age, or human conflict rather than natural predators. The confidence with which elephant herds move through territories shared with lions, leopards, and hyenas speaks to their awareness of their own formidable nature when united. Yet this confidence never manifests as aggression without cause, as elephants generally prefer to avoid confrontation, warning potential threats away with displays and vocalizations rather than immediate violence. The bond between elephant mothers and their female offspring can last an entire lifetime, with daughters remaining in their birth herd and raising their own calves beside their mothers and sisters. Male elephants, by contrast, leave the family group when they reach adolescence, around age 12 to 15, beginning a more solitary life or joining loose associations of other males. This departure is gradual rather than abrupt, with young bulls spending more time at the periphery of the herd before finally moving away permanently. The separation is rarely dramatic, and young males often visit their birth herd periodically during their first years of independence, maintaining connections even as they establish their own territories. Bachelor groups of male elephants form and dissolve fluidly, with individuals coming together for companionship and sometimes following an older, more experienced bull who serves as a mentor. These bull groups lack the tight cohesion of female herds, but provide young males with opportunities to learn from elders without the complications of competing for mating rights. The social lives of male elephants are less understood than those of females, partly because their nomadic nature makes them harder to study, but observations suggest that males maintain friendships lasting years or even decades. When elderly bulls die, other males have been observed showing signs of mourning similar to those displayed by female herds, touching the body gently and standing in silence before finally moving on. An elephant's skin, despite being up to 1 inch thick in some places, is sensitive enough to feel the landing of a fly, allowing them to detect pests and swat them away with their tails or trunks. This sensitivity requires constant maintenance, as the thick skin is prone to cracking in dry conditions, creating crevices where parasites can lodge. The mud baths and dust showers that elephants engage in serve multiple purposes, coating the skin with protective layers while also helping to dislodge ticks, flies, and other parasites that accumulate despite the elephant's best efforts. Some elephants develop preferred bathing sites, returning to the same mud hole repeatedly, suggesting that they find particular qualities in that mud more beneficial than others. The color of an elephant's skin often reflects the color of the soil in their home range, with elephants in red earth appearing rust-colored, while those in gray soil regions take on darker tones. This camouflage is accidental rather than evolutionary, yet it demonstrates how intimately elephants are connected to their specific landscapes, carrying the earth upon them wherever they go. Young elephants sometimes roll in mud with such enthusiasm that they become completely coated, emerging as small, dripping statues that must dry in the sun before the protective layer hardens into armor against the elements. The intelligence of elephants manifests in their ability to learn from single experiences and modify their behavior accordingly, a trait that helps them adapt to changing environments. An elephant who encounters an electric fence will remember the location and avoid it in the future, sometimes teaching other herd members about the danger without them needing to experience the shock themselves. They learn to associate the sound of approaching vehicles with either danger or benign presence, based on past encounters, changing their behavior depending on whether the vehicles belong to tourists, rangers, or poachers. This adaptability extends to feeding strategies, with elephants learning to find and consume new food sources during droughts or when their preferred vegetation becomes scarce. Some populations have learned to raid crops, timing their visits to coincide with harvest when fields are full, but before humans are present in large numbers, demonstrating planning ability and understanding of human schedules. The speed at which elephants can learn and adapt makes them both resilient and vulnerable, as they can survive significant changes to their habitat, but also quickly learn to associate humans with danger when persecution occurs. Teaching between elephants is not limited to mothers and calves, with adults learning from each other throughout their lives, creating a culture that evolves in response to new challenges and opportunities. The vocalizations of elephants range from trumpets and roars that carry for miles to quiet chirps and rumbles, audible only at close range, creating a language far more complex than most humans realize. The famous trumpet sound represents alarm, excitement, or greeting depending on context, while the low rumbles form the basis of most communication between individuals and across distances. Scientists have identified distinct calls for specific situations, including contact calls that simply say, "I am here," to family members out of sight, warning calls that alert others to danger, and what appear to be calls of joy when herds reunite after separation. Baby elephants develop their vocal abilities gradually, babbling like human infants before perfecting the calls they will use throughout their lives. The entire herd participates in vocal exchanges, with multiple elephants contributing to a conversation that may last minutes, each waiting their turn to add their voice to the discussion. The acoustic environment of the savannah shapes how elephants communicate, with they adjust their call frequency and volume based on vegetation density, wind conditions, and the distance to their intended audience. This flexibility in communication shows that elephant vocalizations are not fixed signals, but adaptable expressions that vary with circumstance and intent. When a herd stands together at dusk, rumbling softly to each other as darkness falls, they are engaged in a form of connection that requires no translation, speaking in a language of presence and reassurance that transcends species boundaries. Elephants possess self-awareness, a trait rare in the animal kingdom, demonstrated through their response to mirrors and their use of tools in ways that show understanding of their own body's relationship to their environment. In experiments, elephants recognize their own reflection rather than treating it as another elephant, and they use mirrors to investigate parts of their bodies they cannot normally see, like the inside of their mouths. This self-recognition suggests a concept of self as an individual entity, distinct from others, a cognitive ability thought to underlie empathy and complex social reasoning. Elephants adjust their behavior based on what they can and cannot do, choosing paths that accommodate their size and avoiding obstacles they recognize as impassable rather than attempting impossible routes. When using tools, they show awareness of how the tool extends their body's capabilities, selecting implements based on the task at hand and their own physical limitations. The evidence for self-awareness in elephants continues to mount as researchers design new experiments, But perhaps the most compelling evidence comes from their social behavior, the way they appear to consider others' perspectives and respond to others' emotions. An animal that comforts a distressed companion or deliberately deceives another to obtain food must have some sense of itself as an agent capable of affecting others' mental states. The philosophical implications of elephant self-awareness extend beyond science, raising questions about consciousness, personhood, and the moral consideration we owe to minds that differ from our own, yet share fundamental features of awareness and experience. The cardiovascular system of an elephant is remarkable in its capacity, with a heart weighing up to 50 pounds and beating at a resting rate of only 25 to 30 times per minute. This slow, powerful rhythm pumps blood through a circulatory system that must reach every part of an enormous body, from the tip of the trunk to the soles of the feet. The heart rate increases during exertion, but even when running, an elephant's heart rarely exceeds 40 beats per minute, a testament to the efficiency of a system evolved to support tremendous size. The blood vessels in an elephant's ears are so numerous and close to the surface that the ears function almost like external radiators, releasing heat as blood passes through them before returning to cool the body's core. The thickness of blood vessel walls must be substantial to withstand the pressure generated by pumping blood upward to the brain and throughout such a massive frame. When an elephant rests, lying down to sleep for just a few hours each night, the cardiovascular system continues its slow, steady work, maintaining life with a rhythm as ancient and reliable as the tides. The heart of an elephant, hidden within layers of muscle and bone, beats with a patience that mirrors the animal's entire approach to existence. Measuring out time in deliberate, unhurried pulses, elephants engage in dust-bathing rituals that serve both practical and social functions, selecting particular types of soil based on texture and mineral content. They use their trunks to scoop up dust and throw it over their backs, coating themselves in clouds of fine particles that settle into every crease and fold. Different colored soils impart different tones to their skin, and elephants seem to have preferences, with some individuals traveling significant distances to reach deposits of red earth or white clay. The minerals in certain soils may help repel insects or soothe skin irritations, though elephants may also simply enjoy the sensation of being covered in fresh dust. Young elephants learn the technique by watching adults, though their aim is often poor at first, resulting in clouds of dust that miss their targets entirely and drift away on the breeze. Dust bathing often becomes a group activity, with multiple elephants creating a miniature dust storm as they simultaneously throw earth into the air, the social aspect seeming as important as the practical benefits. After a thorough dust bath, an elephant's appearance transforms completely, taking on the color of the earth and becoming a walking monument to the specific geography of their home. The dust gradually falls away or is washed off during the next bath, but for hours or days, each elephant carries visible evidence of where they have been and what the land has given them. The relationship between elephants and oxpecker birds demonstrates the complexity of symbiotic relationships in nature, as these small birds land on elephants to feed on ticks and other parasites embedded in their skin. The elephants tolerate and even seem to welcome the birds, standing still while oxpeckers walk across their bodies, pecking at parasites with sharp beaks that remove pests the elephants cannot reach themselves. This arrangement benefits both species, with elephants receiving pest control services and birds obtaining easy meals, though recent research suggests the relationship may be more complicated than simple mutualism. Some studies indicate that oxpeckers also feed on the elephant's blood, pecking at wounds to keep them open and fresh, turning from helpful cleaners into mild parasites themselves. Despite this occasional exploitation, elephants rarely chase the birds away, suggesting that the benefits outweigh the costs, or that elephants simply tolerate the minor annoyance. Young elephants learn to accept oxpeckers from observing relaxed adults, though calves sometimes startle at first when birds land on them, shaking their heads and flapping their ears until they grow accustomed to the sensation. The sight of an elephant, standing peacefully while dozens of small birds work across its body, speaks to a patience and stillness that allows cooperation to flourish, even when that cooperation is imperfect and sometimes tilted toward one partner's benefit. Elephants have been observed showing interest in the bones of deceased elephants, particularly skulls and tusks, in ways that suggest fascination or reverence. When encountering elephant remains, individuals will often stop to touch the bones with their trunks, turning them over and exploring them with careful, deliberate movements. They pay special attention to the skulls, running their trunk tips over the contours as if trying to recognize who the elephant once was, though whether they actually remember the individual remains unknown. These investigations can last several minutes, with the entire herd pausing their activities to participate in what appears to be a collective acknowledgement of death. Researchers have found that elephants are more interested in elephant bones than in the remains of other species, even when encountering the skeletons of rhinos or buffalo in similar contexts. This selective attention suggests that elephants recognize their own kind, even after death has stripped away all the features that normally allow identification. Some scientists theorize that these behaviors represent the earliest forms of what we might call ritual or ceremony. Actions performed not for survival benefit, but for social or emotional reasons we can only guess at. The image of an elephant gently cradling another elephant's skull in its trunk, standing in silence while the sun sets over the savannah, remains one of the most haunting and beautiful behaviors observed in the natural world. The migration patterns of elephants follow ancient routes passed down through generations, with herds traveling hundreds of miles between wet and dry season ranges. These journeys are not random wanderings, but purposeful movements toward resources that the matriarch remembers from years of experience, following paths that may have been used by elephants for centuries. The routes often take advantage of permanent features like river valleys and mountain passes, natural corridors that provide easier travel and reliable resources along the way. During migration, the herd moves at a pace that accommodates the youngest and oldest members, sometimes traveling only a few miles per day when calves of very young or elderly elephants are struggling. The matriarch makes decisions about when to rest and when to push forward, balancing the herd's need to reach their destination against the physical limitations of individual members. These migrations create opportunities for different herds to meet, sometimes gathering at traditional meeting grounds where social bonds are renewed, and genetic diversity is maintained through breeding between groups. The predictability of elephant movements once allowed human communities to coexist with elephants by simply avoiding their routes during migration seasons. But as human settlements expand, these ancient pathways become fragmented, forcing elephants to navigate increasingly dangerous landscapes. The persistence of elephants in following traditional routes, even when blocked by human infrastructure, speaks to how deeply these pathways are encoded in their cultural memory, knowledge too valuable to abandon despite the obstacles. The eyes of an elephant are relatively small compared to their body size, but they possess excellent vision that includes the ability to see well in low light conditions. The placement of eyes on the sides of the head provides a wide field of view, allowing elephants to monitor their surroundings for danger while feeding or caring for young. Elephants can distinguish between colors, though their color vision differs from humans, and they are particularly sensitive to movement, quickly detecting even subtle changes in their environment. Despite good eyesight, elephants rely more heavily on their other senses, particularly smell and hearing, when navigating and communicating, using vision primarily for close-range interactions and identifying individuals. The eyes contain a third eyelid that sweeps across the surface to clean and moisten it, protecting the sensitive tissues from dust and debris that would otherwise cause irritation. Elephants blink frequently, and the long lashes help shield their eyes from the harsh sun and the constant shower of dust particles stirred up by movement across dry terrain. When an elephant looks directly at you, the intelligence behind those eyes is unmistakable, a gaze that seems to assess and consider rather than simply seeing. The eyes reflect curiosity, wariness, and sometimes what appears to be amusement, reminding observers that they are in the presence of a mind processing information and making decisions based on observation and thought. The thermoregulation challenges faced by elephants require constant behavioral adjustments, as their large bodies generate significant heat that must be dissipated to prevent overheating. Unlike many animals, elephants cannot pant effectively and lack sweat glands, forcing them to rely on other cooling mechanisms like ear flapping, bathing, and seeking shade during the hottest parts of the day. The surface area to volume ratio of an elephant's body means that they generate heat faster than they can shed it through their skin alone, making water access crucial for survival. When water is available, elephants spend considerable time submerged, allowing the water to cool their bodies directly through contact with their skin. They also spray water over themselves with their trunks, creating an evaporative cooling effect as the water slowly dries. In extreme heat, elephants become largely inactive during midday hours, standing in whatever shade they can find, and minimizing movement to reduce metabolic heat production. The strategies elephants employ to stay cool vary by region, with desert-dwelling elephants having learned to travel at night when temperatures drop, while forest elephants rely more heavily on the natural shade of thick canopy. The constant need to manage body temperature influences nearly every aspect of elephant behavior, from when they feed to where they rest, making the search for comfort as important as the search for food. Elephants demonstrate problem-solving abilities that require understanding abstract concepts, like cooperation and tool use. In experiments, elephants have figured out how to work together to pull a platform loaded with food within reach, understanding that both animals must pull simultaneously or the rope will slip through the apparatus. They show patience, waiting for a partner to arrive before attempting the task, recognizing that solo efforts will fail. In the wild, elephants solve problems like reaching food hung high in trees by piling up objects to stand on, or by recruiting taller herd members to knock down the desired items. They have learned to disable electric fences by pushing logs or large rocks against them to break the wire, or by covering the wire with dirt to ground the current. When crossing rivers with strong currents, older elephants position themselves downstream of calves, providing a physical barrier that reduces the water's force and prevents young elephants from being swept away. These solutions are not instinctive, but invented, requiring observation of the problem, consideration of possible solutions, and implementation of a plan. The cognitive flexibility this demonstrates places elephants among the elite problem solvers of the animal kingdom, capable of innovation and adaptation in ways that ensure survival even in changing environments. Each problem solved adds to the cultural knowledge of the group, passed down as subsequent generations observe and learn from the successes of their elders. The trunk sensitivity allows elephants to feel textures and shapes with extraordinary precision, functioning almost like a combination of fingers and nose. The two finger-like projections at the trunk's tip can manipulate objects as small as a single blade of grass, or as delicate as a thorn that needs to be removed from a footpad. Elephants use their trunks to investigate new objects, running the tip over surfaces to gather information about texture, temperature, and even microscopic details that provide clues about what something is. This tactile exploration is particularly important for young elephants learning about their world, as they touch everything within reach, building a library of sensory experiences that will inform their decisions throughout life. The trunk also serves as a conduit for scent, drawing air across a highly developed olfactory system that can detect water sources from miles away or distinguish between individual elephants based on scent alone. When greeting each other, elephants often touch trunks in a gesture that seems to serve both social and informational purposes, exchanging scent and affirming bonds simultaneously. The tip of the trunk is so sensitive that elephants can feel electrical fields in the air, potentially helping them predict weather changes or navigate in darkness. This remarkable sensory organ makes the trunk perhaps the most versatile appendage in nature, combining strength and delicacy in a single structure that has no parallel anywhere else in the animal kingdom. The spacing between elephants in a herd varies with activity and environment, contracting when danger threatens and expanding when the group feels secure. During travel, family members maintain visual or vocal contact, but may spread out over several hundred yards, each selecting their own feeding areas, while still remaining part of the coordinated group. When resting, the herd tends to cluster more tightly, with individuals touching or nearly touching, creating a collective presence that provides security and comfort. Young elephants remain close to their mothers, regardless of the herd's overall spacing, rarely straying more than a few yards, even in safe conditions. The matriarch position is often at the front during travel or in the center when stationary, allowing her to lead or protect, depending on circumstances. This flexible spacing demonstrates sophisticated spatial awareness and communication, as elephants adjust their positions continuously based on subtle signals from each other and changing environmental conditions. When danger appears, the compression of the herd into defensive formation happens rapidly, with each member moving to their protective position in a choreographed response that requires no discussion or planning. The invisible bonds that hold the herd together stretch and contract like elastic, never breaking but allowing individual freedom within the safety of group cohesion. Watching a herd move across the landscape, their spacing adapts like a living organism, each part aware of the whole, while maintaining its own integrity. The African savanna's seasonal changes dictate the rhythm of elephant life, with the wet season bringing abundance and the dry season requiring careful resource management and travel. During the rains, when grass grows thick and water pools in temporary pans, elephants can remain in smaller territories, feeding easily and spending more time on social activities. Calves born during the wet season have better survival rates, as their mothers can produce richer milk and the environment provides more shelter and resources for vulnerable newborns. As the dry season approaches, the matriarch begins moving the herd toward areas where water and food remain available year-round. Drawing on her memory of past droughts and successful strategies, the dry season tests the herd's resilience, with food becoming less nutritious and water sources requiring sometimes daily treks of dozens of miles. During extreme droughts, elephant herds may split temporarily, with some members staying near depleted water sources, while others range farther afield to feed, reuniting when conditions improve. The seasonal cycle has shaped elephant biology and behavior over millions of years, creating a species whose survival depends on flexibility, memory, and the willingness to endure hardship in the knowledge that better times lie ahead. The patience elephants display during lean times reflects an understanding that seasons change, that suffering has limits, and that life persists through cycles of scarcity and abundance. Elephants modify their behavior based on previous experiences with humans, developing complex assessments of human intentions and adjusting their responses accordingly. In areas where elephants have been hunted or mistreated, they become nocturnal, feeding and traveling at night when human activity is minimal and resting in heavy cover during daylight hours. They learn to associate specific sounds with danger, fleeing at the sound of vehicles or voices in regions where humans pose threats while ignoring similar sounds in protected areas where humans are benign observers. Some elephant populations have learned to distinguish between different human groups, responding calmly to tourists in vehicles while fleeing from the sound of certain ethnic groups who historically hunted them. This discrimination is not instinctual but learned, passed down through generations as mothers teach calves which human encounters are dangerous and which can be ignored. In areas where elephants raid crops, they have learned to avoid farmers during daylight but enter fields at night, timing their raids to minimize dangerous encounters. The adaptability of elephant behavior in response to human pressure demonstrates their intelligence, but also represents a tragic reshaping of natural behavior patterns, as elephants who should be moving freely become cautious, fearful creatures, whose lives are constrained by the need to avoid their only significant predator. The generational trauma visible in elephant populations that have experienced heavy persecution manifests in heightened aggression, increased stress behaviors, and disrupted social structures, showing that memory cuts both ways, preserving lessons of survival but also carrying forward the weight of past suffering. The sleep patterns of elephants differ significantly from most mammals, with adults sleeping only 2 to 3 hours per day, often in multiple short sessions rather than one long period. During these brief rests, elephants may lie down completely, but they often sleep standing up, swaying gently and occasionally leaning against trees for support. The reclining sleep that allows for dreaming and deep rest happens less frequently, primarily when elephants feel completely secure in their environment. Young elephants sleep more than adults, sometimes lying down for several hours at a time, while the herd stands watch over them. The sleep deprivation that would devastate most mammals seems not to affect elephants adversely, suggesting that their brains have evolved different requirements for rest and restoration. During standing sleep, elephants may continue to process sensory information, remaining semi-alert to potential dangers, even while their consciousness dims. This minimal sleep requirement allows elephants to spend more time feeding, necessary given the enormous quantities of food they must consume daily. When an elephant does lie down for deep sleep, the image is almost shocking in its vulnerability, as several tons of animal rest completely on the ground, dependent on the herd's vigilance for survival. The trust required to surrender consciousness so completely speaks to the strength of social bonds, as sleeping elephants literally place their lives in the trunks of their family members who stand watch through the night. The must cycle in male elephants creates a period of heightened aggression and sexual activity, marked by temporal gland secretion and urine dribbling that advertises their condition. During must, which can last several months, bulls become more solitary and more dangerous, challenging other males and seeking out females in estrus with single-minded focus. The onset of must is triggered by good physical condition and adequate nutrition, meaning that bulls in poor health or living in degraded habitats may not enter must at all. Bulls in must walk with a distinctive gait and hold their heads high, broadcasting their status through posture and scent, while other males typically give way to avoid confrontation. The aggressive behavior associated with must serves to establish breeding rights, with the strongest, healthiest males gaining access to females and passing on their genes. Despite the aggression toward other males, bulls in must are not typically dangerous to females or calves, directing their competitive energy specifically at rival males. The must period represents the only time when male elephants become truly aggressive, the rest of their lives being relatively peaceful even when competing for resources. After must ends, bulls often appear exhausted, having expended tremendous energy on competition and having eaten less than usual due to their singular focus on breeding. The cyclical nature of must ensures that no single male remains dominant indefinitely, as the timing of must varies between individuals, allowing different males to breed in different years, and maintaining genetic diversity within populations. The communication network between elephant herds extends beyond family groups, with individuals maintaining awareness of distant herds through infrasonic calls that travel for miles. When one herd discovers abundant resources or faces danger, their calls can attract or warn other elephants not directly related to them, creating a broader information-sharing network across the landscape. This acoustic awareness allows elephants to coordinate movements on a regional scale, avoiding areas of drought or danger, and concentrating in areas where conditions are favorable. The sophistication of this communication system means that news travels through elephant populations faster than the elephants themselves move, with information passing from herd to herd like messages along a telegraph line. Different herds recognize each other's calls, distinguishing between familiar groups and strangers, and adjusting their behavior based on who is calling and what the call contains. During the breeding season, this communication network facilitates encounters between bulls and receptive females from different family groups, essential for maintaining genetic diversity. The invisible web of communication that connects elephants across vast distances creates a meta-community, bound not by constant physical proximity, but by persistent acoustic connection, each herd aware of the other's existence and general location, even when separated by miles of terrain. This network represents one of nature's most impressive communication systems, operating continuously at frequencies below human hearing, carrying messages of life and death, abundance and scarcity, danger and safety across the ancient pathways of the savannah. The gestation and early development of elephant calves requires enormous investment from the mother, who must maintain her own nutrition while supporting a fetus that will be born weighing over 200 pounds. Throughout pregnancy, the mother's movements and feeding become slightly more focused on her own needs, though she maintains her role within the herd structure. As birth approaches, she may seek out particular plants that are thought to help induce labor, suggesting knowledge of medicinal properties passed down through generations. The birth itself usually occurs at night or in early morning, with the mother separating slightly from the herd, accompanied by 1 or 2 experienced females who serve as midwives. The newborn must stand and nurse within hours to survive, and the attending elephants help the calf to its feet, supporting it and guiding it toward the mother's mammary glands. The first milk, or colostrum, provides crucial antibodies that protect the calf from disease, and the mother must ensure the calf nurses successfully in these first critical hours. Other herd members keep watch during this vulnerable time, forming a protective circle that gives the mother and newborn space while guarding against potential threats. Once the calf is nursing and steady on its feet, the family group celebrates with rumbles and gentle touching, welcoming the newest member into the community that will teach and protect it for years to come. The footprint of an elephant tells a story to those who know how to read it, revealing the animal's size, direction of travel, and approximate time of passage. Trackers can estimate an elephant's age from the size of its footprint, with older elephants leaving larger impressions and showing more wear on the footpads. The depth of the print indicates weight and gait, showing whether the elephant was walking calmly or running from danger. Fresh footprints hold moisture and sharp edges that crumble and dry as hours pass, allowing experienced observers to determine how recently the elephant passed. The pattern of prints shows whether a herd traveled together or scattered, whether calves were present, and whether the elephant stopped to feed or moved purposefully toward a destination. In soft earth, the detail in elephant footprints is remarkable, showing the texture of the footpads and sometimes even indicating injuries or abnormalities in gait. These tracks create temporary maps of elephant movements, visible records of journeys that will be erased by wind and rain within days or weeks. For researchers studying elephant populations, footprints provide data about group size, composition, and behavior without requiring direct observation of the animals. Indigenous trackers have read these signs for millennia, following elephant herds to find water or avoiding them to prevent dangerous encounters. The footprint itself is art and information combined, a negative space left behind that speaks volumes about the massive creature that briefly pressed into the earth and moved on. The role of grandmothers in elephant society extends beyond reproductive years, with post-reproductive females providing crucial knowledge and support that increases the survival rates of their grandchildren. These older females no longer give birth themselves but remain active members of the herd, contributing their experience and helping to care for younger generations. Research shows that herds led by older matriarchs have higher survival rates, particularly during droughts or other stressful periods, when accumulated knowledge becomes essential. Grandmothers often develop particularly close bonds with their daughters' calves, spending time with them and teaching them in ways that free the mother to feed and maintain her own health. The presence of post-reproductive females in elephant society demonstrates that evolutionary success is not measured only by individual reproduction, but by the contribution to overall family survival. This grandmother effect, seen in only a few species, including humans and elephants, suggests that wisdom and experience provide benefits that outweigh the costs of supporting individuals past their reproductive prime. The older females serve as living libraries, their memories containing solutions to problems that may not arise every generation but prove crucial when they do. When these matriarchs die, the loss reverberates through the family for years, as younger elephants must learn through trial and error what they might have been taught through observation and guidance. The value placed on elderly females in elephant society stands in stark contrast to many species where post-reproductive individuals are pushed to the margins or abandoned entirely. The relationship between elephants and fire is complex, with their behavior both influencing and being influenced by the periodic burns that sweep through savanna ecosystems. Elephants can predict fire weather, becoming restless and moving toward areas less likely to burn when conditions turn dangerous. Their feeding behavior, which involves knocking down trees and clearing vegetation, creates fire breaks that can slow or stop the spread of flames, inadvertently protecting areas they frequent. After fires pass, elephants are often among the first large animals to return, attracted by the new growth that springs up in the wake of flames and by the mineral-rich ash that supplements their diet. They seem to understand that fire, while dangerous, is also regenerative, and they adjust their ranging patterns to take advantage of post-burn resources. Young elephants learn about fire from their mothers, watching how adults respond to smoke and flames, and learning which areas offer safety when fire threatens. The knowledge of how to survive fire season is passed down generationally, with experienced matriarchs leading their families to proven safe zones when danger looms. The elephant's relationship with fire demonstrates their understanding of ecological cycles and their ability to integrate even dangerous natural phenomena into their survival strategies. In areas where fire suppression has changed natural burn patterns, elephant behavior has adapted, though the long-term effects of these changes on elephant ecology remain uncertain. The strength of an elephant is difficult to comprehend without witnessing it directly, as these animals can push over mature trees, move boulders, and lift weights that would require machinery for humans to handle. An adult elephant can carry up to 9,000 pounds, though they rarely need to lift anything approaching that weight in their natural environment. The power in their tusks allows them to pry apart logs, dig through hard-packed earth, and defend against threats with devastating force. Yet this same strength is applied with remarkable control when interacting with young or vulnerable individuals, demonstrating that power without precision would be useless or even dangerous to a social animal. The trunk alone can lift several hundred pounds, while the whole body working together can reshape the environment in ways normally associated only with humans and their machines. Despite this strength, elephants use force judiciously, preferring to push or lean rather than strike, and employing their power primarily for accessing food, water, or creating comfortable resting places. The combination of strength and gentleness makes elephants paradoxical creatures, capable of enormous destruction, yet choosing to move through their world with care and consideration for smaller, weaker beings. When an elephant pushes over a tree, it does so with purpose, accessing the roots and upper branches, while simultaneously creating gaps in the canopy that benefit other species, making even their most forceful actions part of a larger ecological balance. The seasonal availability of certain plants influences elephant movements and diet in ways that create annual patterns repeating across decades. Elephants know when specific trees will fruit, arriving at those locations precisely when the food becomes available, sometimes traveling considerable distances to exploit these temporary resources. They remember the locations of mineral licks where essential salts and nutrients can be obtained, visiting these sites particularly when dietary needs require supplementation. Pregnant and nursing females show increased interest in certain plants rich in calcium and other minerals necessary for fetal development and milk production. The selectivity elephants display in their feeding demonstrates that they are not indiscriminate consumers of vegetation, but sophisticated foragers who make choices based on nutritional needs, palatability, and availability. Some plants are eaten only at certain times of year when their toxin levels are lowest, suggesting knowledge of seasonal changes in plant chemistry. Other species are avoided entirely when alternatives exist, but become dietary staples during lean times, showing flexibility in response to necessity. The accumulated knowledge of what to eat, where to find it, and when it will be available represents a form of ecological expertise that takes years to acquire and requires a memory system capable of storing and retrieving information across multiple annual cycles. Young elephants spend years watching their mothers feed, learning not just what is edible but when different foods are at their best, and where reliable sources can be found when preferred options are unavailable. The death of a matriarch creates a succession event that can determine the fate of an entire family group, with the next oldest female typically assuming leadership if she possesses sufficient experience and confidence. This transition is not always smooth, particularly if the next female in line is relatively young, or if multiple females of similar age compete for the position. Some herds split after losing a matriarch, with different factions following different leaders, until new stable groups form. The period immediately following a matriarch's death is dangerous for the family, as they must navigate without her accumulated knowledge, precisely when they are most vulnerable to making fatal mistakes. If the new leader is inexperienced, the herd may struggle during droughts or become more susceptible to human threats, as the knowledge required to avoid danger and find resources takes decades to acquire. Researchers have documented herds making poor decisions after losing their matriarch, such as abandoning traditional dry season ranges or failing to avoid areas of human conflict. Yet other herds transition smoothly, with competent leaders stepping into the role and maintaining the family's cohesion and survival strategies. The importance of leadership succession has implications for conservation, as poaching that targets the oldest, largest elephants with the biggest tusks removes precisely those individuals whose knowledge and leadership are most crucial for family survival. The death of one elephant can thus ripple outward, affecting the survival probabilities of dozens of others who depended on her wisdom. The acoustic landscape that elephants inhabit is far richer than what humans can perceive, filled with low-frequency rumbles, environmental sounds, and the voices of other animals that create a complex symphony of information. Elephants filter this continuous stream of sound, focusing on relevant signals while ignoring background noise, much as humans tune out conversations that do not concern them. The ability to detect and interpret these sounds over long distances means that elephants are constantly receiving updates about their world, learning about distant events through sound waves that carry news of rain, other herds, or potential dangers. They orient their ears towards sounds of interest, swiveling them independently to pinpoint the source of calls or unusual noises that might require investigation or response. The savannah itself produces sounds that elephants use for navigation and assessment, from the rumble of distant thunder promising rain to the absence of bird calls that might signal a predator's presence. This acoustic awareness creates a perceptual bubble extending miles beyond the physical location of the elephant, allowing them to exist simultaneously in the immediate present and in distant spaces connected only by sound. When researchers play recorded elephant calls from speakers, wild elephants respond as though real elephants were calling, approaching, or avoiding the sound, based on whether the recorded call belongs to family or strangers. This proves that elephants not only hear, but understand the meaning encoded in vocalizations, processing acoustic information with sophistication that rivals any species on Earth. The impact of elephants on tree populations shapes entire ecosystems, with their feeding creating mosaics of different aged vegetation that support diverse animal communities. When elephants push over mature trees, they create gaps where sunlight reaches the ground, allowing grasses and shrubs to grow and providing habitat for species that cannot survive in closed forest. The fallen trees themselves become resources, their decaying wood supporting insects, fungi, and small mammals, while their branches and leaves provide food for browsers who cannot reach high vegetation. Elephants also prevent certain tree species from dominating the landscape by preferentially feeding on them, maintaining diversity by suppressing the most successful competitors. In areas where elephants have been removed, vegetation structure changes dramatically within years, with bush encroachment reducing grasslands and certain tree species forming dense stands that exclude other plants. The return of elephants to these areas can reverse these changes, though the process takes time, as elephants gradually reopen the landscape through their feeding and movement. This role as vegetation architects makes elephants essential for maintaining the savanna as a mixed habitat of trees and grass, rather than allowing succession toward pure forest or pure grassland. The specific mix of vegetation types that characterizes healthy savanna exists partly because elephants maintain it through their daily activities, each meal contributing to the larger pattern of ecosystem structure. Without elephants, the savanna would still exist, but it would be a fundamentally different place, less diverse and less suitable for the many species adapted to the varied habitats that elephants create. The empathy elephants display toward injured or distressed family members extends to providing practical assistance that increases survival chances for the afflicted. When a family member is injured or ill, other elephants will slow their pace to accommodate the struggling individual, sometimes remaining with them for days or weeks while they recover. They support injured elephants physically, allowing them to lean on stronger individuals while walking, and position themselves to provide shade during rest periods. If an elephant becomes stuck in mud or falls into a hole, family members work together to free them, digging with their tusks and pulling with their trunks until the trapped animal can escape. There are documented cases of elephants bringing food to injured family members who cannot walk to feeding areas, and providing water by spraying it into their mouths from their own trunks. This level of care requires coordination and a willingness to sacrifice personal needs for another's benefit, behaviors that suggest elephants possess not just intelligence but compassion. The injured elephant's recovery chances increase dramatically when they receive this support, demonstrating that altruism in elephant society provides concrete survival benefits. Even when recovery is impossible and the injured elephant is dying, family members often remain nearby until death comes, standing watch in what appears to be vigil, or simply the reluctance to abandon a loved one. These behaviors challenge the notion that only humans care for their sick and dying, showing that compassion may have deeper evolutionary roots than we previously understood. The wallowing behavior of elephants serves multiple functions beyond cooling and parasite control, including social bonding and what might be simple pleasure. Mud baths often become group activities where family members wallow together, creating a shared experience that seems to strengthen social ties. Young elephants play in the mud, rolling and sliding in ways that serve no obvious practical purpose, but appear to bring them joy. The selection of wallowing sites is not random, with elephants returning to favored spots repeatedly, suggesting preferences based on mud consistency, water depth, or perhaps just positive memories associated with particular locations. After wallowing, elephants often stand in the sun, allowing the mud to dry, creating a protective crust that will gradually flake off over subsequent days. Some scientists suggest that the minerals absorbed through the skin during mud baths provide nutritional benefits, supplementing the diet with elements that might be scarce in their food. The time spent wallowing, which can extend for an hour or more, represents a significant investment that would only make sense if the benefits were substantial, or if the activity provided psychological rewards beyond mere physical comfort. Watching elephants wallow, throwing mud with their trunks, and submerging repeatedly, one gets the sense of creatures not just surviving, but experiencing their world, taking pleasure in sensations and activities that make life richer than mere existence would require. The phenomenon of elephant graveyards, while often exaggerated in myth, has some basis in reality as certain locations accumulate elephant bones due to specific environmental features. Areas near permanent water sources sometimes become final resting places for dying elephants, who instinctively move toward water as their bodies fail, leading to concentrations of remains in these locations. Elephants, weakened by old age or injury, naturally seek out areas with reliable resources where they can survive as long as possible, and these same locations become where they eventually die. The myth of elephants purposefully traveling to specific graveyards to die is not supported by evidence, yet the reality that certain locations do accumulate elephant remains gives the legend a kernel of truth. These accumulation sites become places where living elephants encounter the bones of many deceased elephants, perhaps contributing to their apparent fascination with elephant remains. The bones themselves, particularly the massive skulls and curved tusks, persist in the environment for decades, creating monuments to the lives that once animated them. When elephants pause to investigate these bone fields, running their trunks over multiple skulls and tusks, they engage with mortality in ways that blur the line between instinct and contemplation. The sites where many elephants have died become almost sacred spaces, not through any deliberate consecration, but through the simple accumulation of death and the attention that living elephants pay to these remnants of their kind. The relationship between elephant mothers and their daughters often strengthens over time, with daughters remaining close to their mothers for life and eventually caring for aging mothers as they once were cared for. This multi-generational bond creates a matrilineal society where kinship defines social structure and inheritance of knowledge flows from older to younger females. Daughters learn everything from their mothers, from feeding techniques to social protocols, and they often adopt similar behavioral patterns and movement strategies. As mothers age and their physical abilities decline, daughters increasingly take on protective and supportive roles, positioning themselves between their mothers and potential threats, or helping them across difficult terrain. The reversal of care relationships, where children become caregivers for parents, demonstrates continuity of social bonds across the lifespan and suggests that elephants recognize obligations that extend beyond immediate self-interest. When a mother dies, her daughter often shows signs of grief that persist for weeks or months, and the daughter may visit the location of death repeatedly during this period. The strength of mother-daughter bonds means that losing a mother affects daughters deeply, even when they are themselves mature adults, with their own calves, the loss representing not just the death of a parent, but the severing of a relationship that has defined their entire existence. These bonds create the stable core of elephant society, with related females forming partnerships that last generations and provide the foundation for all other social relationships within the herd. The ability of elephants to modify their environment makes them ecosystem engineers, whose activities benefit numerous other species who could not survive without the changes elephants create. The wells they dig provide water for animals who cannot dig themselves. The paths they create allow smaller animals to navigate through dense vegetation, and the clearings they make generate habitat diversity. The grass that grows in areas where elephants have disturbed the soil is often more nutritious than undisturbed grass, attracting grazers who benefit from the elephant's inadvertent cultivation. The holes and depressions elephants create become microhabitats for insects, amphibians, and small mammals, while the trees they push over provide nesting sites for birds and denning sites for mammals. Even elephant dung supports entire communities of organisms, from dung beetles who depend on it entirely to plants that germinate from seeds passed through elephant digestive systems. The removal of elephants from an ecosystem causes cascading changes, as these ecosystem services disappear, with water becoming less accessible, vegetation structure simplifying, and species diversity declining. Conservation efforts increasingly recognize that protecting elephants means protecting the multitude of species who depend on the habitats elephants create and maintain. The interconnectedness of savanna ecology reveals that no species exists in isolation, that the presence or absence of one animal can reshape the entire community, and that elephants, by virtue of their size and behavior, shape their world more than most. The tactile communication between elephants involves touching with trunks in ways that convey comfort, reassurance, dominance, or affection, depending on context and manner. Family members frequently intertwine their trunks briefly when passing, a gesture that seems to serve as greeting or acknowledgement. Mothers touch their calves almost constantly, running their trunk along the calf's body in ways that appear to provide reassurance and maintain physical connection. During stressful situations, elephants touch each other more frequently, with subordinate individuals touching more dominant ones, as if seeking comfort or permission. The trunk is used to explore other elephants' mouths, temporal glands, and genital areas, gathering chemical information about emotional state, health, and reproductive condition. Young elephants seek out trunk contact, inserting the tip of their trunk into an older elephant's mouth, in a gesture of submission and trust that is accepted calmly by adults. These tactile exchanges happen continuously within elephant groups, creating a network of physical connections that binds the herd together through touch as much as through sound or sight. The gentleness of these touches, given the strength of the trunk, speaks to the fine control elephants possess and the importance they place on physical contact. In a species where individuals can weigh several tons and possess immense power, the prevalence of gentle touching rather than aggressive physical contact reveals a society built on cooperation and affection rather than violence and dominance. The learning period for young elephants extends across years, with calves remaining behaviorally immature and dependent on guidance until well into adolescence. Young elephants practice skills like trunk use, feeding techniques, and social behaviors through play and observation, refining their abilities gradually as their nervous systems mature. The early years are characterized by exploration and experimentation, with calves trying behaviors and learning from successes and failures under the watchful supervision of adults. Adolescence brings increased independence and sometimes rebellion, with young elephants testing boundaries and occasionally making poor decisions that adults must correct. The extended childhood necessary for elephants to master the complex skills required for survival explains why they invest so heavily in parental care and why family structure is so crucial to their species. Without years of teaching and protection, young elephants would lack the knowledge and physical development necessary to survive, making the patience of adults essential to species persistence. The fact that elephants continue learning throughout their lives, with even elderly individuals observed trying new behaviors or adopting innovations introduced by others, suggests that cognitive flexibility remains high even in old age. This lifelong capacity for learning allows elephants to adapt to changing environments and novel challenges, providing resilience in the face of both natural and human-caused changes to their world. The image of a 60-year-old elephant teaching a new feeding technique to her 50-year-old daughter, who then teaches it to her own calves, illustrates how knowledge accumulates and flows through generations, creating a culture as real and important as any material inheritance. The threats facing wild elephants have shifted from primarily natural causes to overwhelmingly human-caused mortality, with habitat loss and poaching representing the greatest dangers. The expansion of human settlements fragments elephant ranges, cutting off access to seasonal resources and forcing elephants into smaller areas that cannot support large populations. As human-elephant conflict increases, with elephants raiding crops and occasionally injuring or killing people, retaliatory killings reduce populations and create fear in elephants who learn to associate humans with danger. Poaching for ivory remains a persistent threat despite international bans, as demand continues in some markets, and the value of tusks creates incentives for killing. The selective removal of large tusked individuals, typically the oldest and most knowledgeable elephants, disrupts social structures and removes precisely those individuals whose experience is most valuable to their families. Climate change adds another layer of threat, altering rainfall patterns and increasing the frequency of droughts that stress populations already struggling with reduced ranges and human conflict. Despite these challenges, elephants demonstrate remarkable resilience, persisting in fragmented habitats and adapting their behavior to coexist with humans when given the opportunity. Conservation efforts increasingly focus on creating corridors between protected areas, reducing human-elephant conflict through better land use planning, and addressing the root causes of poaching through both enforcement and demand reduction. The future of elephants depends not just on protecting them from harm, but on preserving the ecological and social conditions that allow them to thrive as the complex, intelligent, social beings they are. The speed at which elephants can move when necessary surprises those accustomed to seeing them at their typical unhurried pace, as they can charge at speeds exceeding 25 miles per hour. This burst speed is reserved for emergencies, threats, or occasionally playful charges toward water, and cannot be sustained for long distances. The normal walking pace of elephants is around 4 miles per hour, a speed that allows them to cover significant distances while conserving energy and accommodating slower family members. When herds travel together, the pace is set by the slowest members, ensuring that no one is left behind, even if it means taking longer to reach destinations. The gait of an elephant is unique among quadrupeds, with all 4 feet never leaving the ground simultaneously, meaning they walk rather than run even at high speeds. This adaptation supports their great weight, distributing force across multiple points of contact and preventing the jarring impacts that would result from a running gait. Despite their mass, elephants move with remarkable grace, navigating obstacles and adjusting their movements to terrain with fluid precision. The contrast between their normal, peaceful ambling and the sudden explosive speed of a charge demonstrates the latent power that elephants carry within them, usually controlled but always available when circumstances demand. Watching an elephant shift from calm grazing to full charge in seconds reminds observers that these gentle giants are also formidable animals, fully capable of defending themselves and their families when threatened. The role of play in elephant society extends beyond young animals, with adults sometimes engaging in playful behaviors that serve no obvious survival purpose. Elephants chase each other, splash in water, and engage in mock sparring that appears designed for entertainment rather than serious competition. These playful moments often occur when resources are abundant and danger is absent, suggesting that play requires a certain level of security and comfort. The psychological benefits of play may include stress reduction, social bonding, and simply the enjoyment of an activity for its own sake. Young elephants play more frequently and inventively than adults, but the fact that adults retain the capacity for play throughout their lives indicates that behavioral flexibility and social engagement remain important even after reaching maturity. Play also serves as a safe context for learning and practicing skills that might be needed in more serious situations, allowing elephants to explore their capabilities without real consequences. The observation that elephants seem to enjoy themselves during play, showing signs of excitement and what appears to be laughter in their vocalizations, suggests an emotional life that includes positive experiences beyond mere contentment or absence of suffering. In a world often focused on survival and reproduction as the sole measures of biological success, the playfulness of elephants reminds us that life for intelligent, social animals includes dimensions of experience that resist simple, functional explanations. The sight of an elephant family playing together in water, trumpeting and splashing with abandon, captures something essential about what it means to be alive and aware in a body capable of sensation and emotion. The mourning behaviors elephants display when family members die have been documented extensively, with responses varying from individual to individual, but often including prolonged attendance at the body and attempts to rouse the deceased. Elephants touch dead family members gently with their trunks, covering them with vegetation and soil, and sometimes standing guard for days. Calves who lose their mothers show signs of depression and stress that persist for months, with reduced feeding and social engagement indicating psychological impact. Adult elephants who lose close relatives may change their behavior patterns, becoming more withdrawn or showing increased aggression that suggests emotional disturbance. The fact that elephants return to the sites where family members died, sometimes years later, and pause to touch the bones, suggests that memory of the deceased persists and continues to influence behavior. Whether elephants experience grief in ways comparable to human grief remains unknowable, but the behavioral evidence certainly suggests emotional responses to death that go beyond simple recognition that an individual is no longer alive. The selective attention elephants pay to elephant bones rather than the remains of other species indicates that they recognize their own kind. Even in death, a cognitive ability that requires abstract thinking about categories and identities. These mourning behaviors, combined with elephants' apparent awareness of their own mortality, demonstrated by their cautious approach to dangerous situations, suggest a level of existential awareness rare in the animal kingdom. The question of whether elephants contemplate death or simply respond to it emotionally may be unanswerable, but watching them grieve leaves little doubt that they experience loss as something profound and disruptive. The economic value of elephants extends far beyond ivory, with living elephants generating tourism revenue that often exceeds the value of their tusks many times over. Protected areas, where elephants can be observed safely, attract visitors from around the world, creating jobs and income for local communities and providing incentives for conservation. The recognition that elephants are worth more alive than dead has shifted conservation approaches in many regions, with protection efforts receiving local support when benefits flow to communities who bear the costs of living alongside elephants. Yet this economic framing, while useful for conservation advocacy, reduces elephants to their utility for humans, missing their intrinsic value as sentient beings with their own interests and experiences. The ethical arguments for protecting elephants increasingly emphasize their cognitive and emotional sophistication, their capacity for suffering and joy, and the obligation humans have to share the planet with other intelligent life. The legal status of elephants in some jurisdictions has evolved to recognize them as more than property, with some courts acknowledging their personhood in limited contexts and granting them certain protections based on their demonstrated intelligence and emotional complexity. These evolving perspectives reflect growing understanding of elephant minds and the recognition that our relationship with these animals raises moral questions about how we treat beings so clearly capable of rich inner lives. The conservation of elephants thus becomes not just an ecological or economic issue, but a question of justice and shared existence on a planet that belongs to all its inhabitants, human and non-human alike. The vocalizations elephants make include more than rumbles and trumpets, with chirps, roars, cries, and bark-like sounds forming part of their acoustic repertoire. Each sound carries specific information, though humans are still deciphering the full complexity of elephant language. Calves make high-pitched squeals when distressed, a sound that reliably brings adults rushing to investigate and provide comfort. The contact rumbles elephants use to maintain awareness of family members' locations vary in subtle ways that may encode information about the caller's identity, emotional state, and intentions. When elephants find food or water, they often call to family members, sharing the discovery rather than keeping it to themselves. The acoustic structure of these calls carries information about distance, direction, and urgency, allowing receivers to determine whether they should respond immediately or continue their current activity. Young elephants gradually learn to produce and interpret these calls through exposure and practice, with adults sometimes appearing to correct or instruct them when they vocalize inappropriately. The discovery that elephants name each other, using specific call patterns to address particular individuals, adds another layer to their linguistic complexity and suggests abstract symbolic thinking previously attributed only to humans and a few other species. When researchers play recordings of an individual's name call, that elephant responds while others ignore it, proving that the calls function as true names rather than just general attention-getters. This naming behavior implies that elephants possess concepts of individual identity distinct from mere recognition, that they can think about absent individuals and call them specifically even when they cannot see them. The implications of this discovery continue to reshape our understanding of animal cognition and communication, revealing capacities we had not imagined possible in non-human minds. The ivory tusks of elephants, while beautiful and valuable to humans, are simply teeth that elephants use as tools throughout their lives, yet these teeth have driven elephants to the brink of extinction in some regions. The desire for ivory has led to wholesale slaughter of elephant populations, with millions killed over the centuries to supply demand for decorative objects, piano keys, and other luxury items. The banning of international ivory trade has reduced but not eliminated poaching, as black markets persist and some legal ivory supplies continue to exist. The irony that elephants are killed for accessories and decorations, objects humans do not need for survival, creates a tragic imbalance where intelligent, social, emotional beings die for trinkets. Some elephant populations now show increased frequency of tusklessness, as selective pressure from poaching has favored elephants born without tusks, or with very small tusks that make them less attractive targets. This rapid evolutionary change demonstrates adaptation in real time, but represents a loss of natural diversity and eliminates the survival advantages that tusks provide in wild elephants. The long-term effects of selecting against tusks remain unknown, but the fact that humans have altered elephant evolution through killing pressure represents a profound impact on the species. Conservation efforts to reduce demand for ivory through education and cultural change attack the root of the problem, recognizing that as long as markets exist, poaching will continue, regardless of laws and enforcement. The challenge of changing human behavior and values to save elephants from being killed for their teeth illustrates the complex intersection of economics, culture, ethics, and conservation in the modern world. The matriarchal structure of elephant society concentrates knowledge and leadership in the oldest females, creating a system where experience is valued and elders guide the group's decisions. This social structure differs from many mammal societies where males dominate or where leadership rotates based on physical strength rather than accumulated wisdom. The female-centered nature of elephant herds means that bonds between mothers, daughters, sisters, and aunts form the society's foundation, with males playing peripheral roles after adolescence. The emphasis on female relationships and cooperation may partly explain elephants' apparent empathy and altruism, as these traits benefit relatives who share genes and increase the survival of the social group as a whole. The stability of matriarchal herds, with members remaining together for decades, allows the development of complex social knowledge and cultural traditions that cannot exist in more fluid social systems. Young females learn leadership gradually, observing the matriarch's decision-making and occasionally testing their own judgment in low-stakes situations. This apprenticeship model ensures that leadership skills are taught rather than simply inherited, though not all elephants possess the temperament or cognitive abilities to become successful matriarchs. When human activities remove the oldest females from populations, either through selective hunting or random mortality that affects all age classes, the social structure can collapse, leaving herds without experienced guidance. The recognition that elephant society depends on specific individuals whose knowledge cannot be easily replaced has changed conservation approaches, with increased focus on protecting older females and maintaining intact family groups rather than just maintaining population numbers. The society elephants have built over millions of years of evolution represents an alternative to human social organization that succeeds brilliantly in its own context, reminding us that intelligence can take many forms and create many different types of successful societies. The way forward for elephant conservation requires balancing human needs with elephant needs, creating landscapes where both can coexist without conflict or exploitation. Corridors connecting protected areas allow elephants to maintain traditional migration routes while minimizing conflict with human settlements. Community-based conservation programs that involve local people in protection efforts and ensure they benefit from living near elephants build support for conservation where it matters most, reducing human-elephant conflict through better land use planning. Compensation schemes for crop damage and non-lethal deterrence helps communities tolerate elephants as neighbors rather than viewing them as pests. Addressing the demand side of ivory trafficking through changing attitudes and increasing enforcement reduces the economic incentives that drive poaching. Climate change adaptation strategies that account for both human and elephant needs for water and space will become increasingly important as environments shift and pressures intensify. The scientific research that reveals elephant intelligence, emotions, and social complexity provides powerful arguments for their protection based not just on ecological or economic value, but on moral consideration for beings who share with us the capacity for suffering and awareness. Hope for elephants lies not in one solution, but in multiple approaches. working together across scales from local communities to international agreements, all recognizing that elephants deserve space to exist, not just because they benefit ecosystems or generate tourism, but because they are fellow inhabitants of this planet, possessed of lives and experiences that have value in themselves. The 21st century will determine whether elephants continue as wild, free-ranging populations, or persist only in small, managed reserves. And this determination depends on choices humans make about what kind of world we want to live in, and who we believe deserves to share it with us. And now the elephants fade behind your thoughts. We've drifted through 100 quiet truths about these gentle beasts of the savannah, from the wisdom held in ancient memories to the tenderness of a trunk touching a newborn. From the rumbles that travel beneath the earth to the patient, deliberate footsteps that reshape the land, you are connected to this world. The same sun that warms elephant skin warms yours. The same earth that holds their footprints holds your weight. The same capacity for memory, for connection, for love, exists in both your mind and theirs, expressed differently but rooted in the same ancient mammalian heritage we share. Tonight, as you rest, elephants stand in darkness beneath African stars, ears moving gently in the night breeze, trunks occasionally touching family members for reassurance. They continue their patient existence, moving through the hours with the same steady calm they have carried for millions of years. And you are safe, warm, resting in a world full of wonder, where gentleness and strength walk together across golden grasslands, where memory carries wisdom through generations, and where the simple act of being alive connects us all. If you're still awake, go ahead and watch the next chapter. Sleep well and dream softly. Good night.